The ancient training hall of the Galactic Coalition Military Academy stood in the center of a massive stone plaza. Walls of polished gray metal stretched up 30 meters on all sides. Inside those walls hung weapons from 10,000 years of galactic history. Every weapon came from a different species. Every weapon told a story of war, victory, or defeat. The oldest weapons came from civilizations that no longer existed. The newest came from species that had joined the coalition just 500 years ago. Lieutenant Marcus Webb walked through the hall with his eyes wide open. He was human, and humans had only joined the coalition 5 years ago. This was the first human ever allowed to train at the military academy. The other cadets from different species watched him carefully. They wanted to see if a human could even understand the weapons of advanced civilizations. Marcus was tall and strong. His face had sharp features, and his hair was dark brown. He wore the gray uniform of a junior military officer. On his chest hung the blue badge that showed he was a human representative of the Galactic Coalition. He tried to look confident, but inside he felt small. The academy was designed for species that could see in the infrared spectrum, that could hear sounds humans could not hear, that could process information faster than any human brain could manage. But Marcus had something different. His grandfather had been a blacksmith. In rural Montana, where Marcus grew up, his grandfather shaped metal with hammer and fire. Marcus had spent his teenage years in that workshop. He learned how metal bends. He learned how weight distributes along a blade. He learned how a hammerhead needs to be perfectly balanced or it becomes useless. That knowledge sat in his hands and arms like memory stored in muscle. The Vex instructor walked into the hall. His name in his own language was something that humans could not pronounce, but everyone called him Keeper. The Vex were tall and thin. They had long fingers and moved with perfect mechanical precision. They had been members of the coalition for 30,000 years. They were famous for remembering history. Every Vex child learned to memorize facts and dates and names. They built the greatest libraries in the galaxy. They kept the records of every species, every war, every cultural achievement. Keeper looked at Marcus without expression. The Vex did not show emotion the way humans did, but Marcus could read the doubt in Keeper's posture. The Vex instructor did not believe that a human could understand ancient weapons. How could a species that had only existed in space travel for 70 years understand weapons made by civilizations that had mastered warfare when humans were still learning to farm? Keeper spoke in the common language that all species in the coalition used to communicate. His voice was dry and flat. Today, we examine the 5 greatest weapons in galactic history. These weapons come from 5 extinct civilizations. The Karath civilization ended 8,000 years ago. The Helia civilization ended 6,500 years ago. The Meridian, Taurian, and Velsha civilizations all ended between 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. All of them left behind records of their weapons. All of these records are accurate and complete. Keeper walked toward the first display. The 5 weapons lay on stands of polished dark wood. The wood had been treated with special chemicals so it would not decay. Each weapon was a sword, a long blade used for close combat. Humans still use swords, but most species had moved beyond them. Modern weapons used energy and gravity. Swords seemed ancient and useless. But that was not the point. These swords represented something else. They showed what warriors had valued. They showed how a species thought about combat. They showed what kinds of bodies and minds had created them. Keeper pointed to the first weapon. This is a Karath ceremonial blade. The Karath were a warrior species. They valued honor above all things. This blade was never used in actual battle. It was used only in ceremonies where warriors showed respect to each other. The weight is perfectly balanced. The curve of the blade shows the genius of Karath metalworkers. It has not changed in the 8,000 years since the Karath civilization ended. It is exactly as it was when first created. Marcus looked at the blade. It was beautiful. The metal caught the light and made patterns across its surface. But something felt wrong to him. He did not say anything. He had learned to be careful about speaking his thoughts. Humans were new to the coalition. They needed to show respect to older species. They needed to prove they could follow rules and accept authority. Keeper moved to the second blade. This is a Helios combat sword. The Helios were fighters. They fought in open fields. This blade was designed for speed and precision. The Helios had different physiology than the Karath. They were shorter and heavier. This blade is perfect for their body type. It has served as a model for combat blades across the galaxy for 6,000 years. Marcus studied this blade too. This one felt right to him. The balance was correct. The weight sat properly along the blade. It looked like something his grandfather would have approved of. It looked like something that had been made by someone who understood what they were doing. Keeper pointed to the third, fourth, and fifth blades. He spoke about the Meridian blade, designed for warriors who fought in water and on land. He spoke about the Taurian blade, which was longer and heavier than the others. He spoke about the Velsha blade, which was curved in a way that made it unique in galactic history. Marcus listened to everything. He watched the way each blade caught the light. He thought about the weight of each one, even though he could not hold them. In the academy, ancient weapons could not be touched by students. They were too valuable. They were artifacts that had to be preserved for future generations. But Marcus's hands itched. They wanted to hold these swords. They wanted to test the balance. His body knew things that his mind had not yet put into words. His grandfather's teachings were speaking to him. They were telling him something was wrong. They were telling him that some of these weapons did not match what they should be. The presentation lasted 3 hours. Keeper showed Marcus records and measurements. He showed him holographic images of the weapons being used in ancient times. He showed him documents written by the Karath, the Helios, the Meridian, the Taurian, and the Velsha. Every piece of information said the same thing. These weapons were perfect. They were exactly as the ancient species had made them. They had not changed. They could not be improved on at the end of the presentation. Keeper gestured for Marcus to leave. The other cadets were waiting in the corridor outside. They wanted to know what Marcus had learned. But Marcus said nothing. He walked past them without speaking. He went to his small room in the academy dormitory. He lay on his bed and thought about his grandfather's workshop in Montana. He thought about the sound of hammer on metal. He thought about the feeling of a perfectly balanced tool. And he thought about the weapons in the training hall. Something was wrong with them. He was certain of this now, but he did not yet know what was wrong, or how he could possibly explain it to a Vex instructor who had been studying these weapons for 300 years. 3 days passed. Marcus attended his regular combat classes. He learned fighting techniques from the Vex. He practiced with the younger cadets from other species. He studied the history of galactic warfare. He did everything that a good military student should do. But his mind was not really on any of these things. His mind was still in the training hall with the 5 ancient weapons. On the 4th day, Marcus made a decision. He would speak to Keeper. He would ask for a private meeting. This was a bold thing for a human to do. It was bold to question a Vex instructor. It was bold to suggest that someone might be wrong about something they had studied for 300 years. But Marcus knew that if he did not ask, he would regret it forever. He sent a message to Keeper through the Academy communication system. He wrote that he had questions about the ancient weapons. He asked if the instructor would meet with him in private. He was careful to be polite. He used formal language. He thanked Keeper for his time and expertise. The response came within an hour. Keeper agreed to meet him. The meeting would be at the training hall at 6 o'clock in the evening. After the regular classes ended, Marcus felt nervous and excited at the same time. He did not eat much at dinner. The other human cadets noticed that something was wrong with him. There were 4 other humans training at the academy. They had all been selected the same year as Marcus. They were all smart and strong. But they were also careful. They did not question things. They did not ask difficult questions. They accepted what they were told by Vex instructors and other authority figures. At 5:50, Marcus walked to the training hall. The sun was setting outside, and the sky turned orange and red. The academy grounds were beautiful when the sun set. But Marcus did not pay attention to the sky. He was thinking about what he would say to Keeper. The training hall was empty except for the weapons. They hung on the walls like ghosts from the past. The 5 swords still sat on their wooden stands. They looked exactly the same as they had 3 days ago. But to Marcus, they looked different now. He could see the details more clearly. He could see where the metal had been worked and reworked. He could see the tiny marks that showed the weapons had been handled and maintained over thousands of years. Keeper arrived exactly at 6 o'clock. The Vex instructor moved without making any sound. His long fingers were folded in front of his thin body. His face showed no expression. "You wish to speak with me," Keeper said. It was not a question. It was a statement. "Yes, instructor," Marcus said. "I have been thinking about the weapons you showed me. I have questions about them. But I am not sure if my questions are acceptable. I do not want to show disrespect." Keeper's head tilted slightly to one side. This was how Vex showed curiosity. Questions are never disrespectful if they are asked with genuine desire to understand. "What do you wish to know?" Marcus took a deep breath. He walked toward the first sword, the Kareth ceremonial blade. "Instructor, I come from a family of metal workers. My grandfather was a blacksmith. He taught me to understand how metal works. He taught me about balance and weight and the physics of tools. When I look at these weapons, my training tells me something. I am not sure if I am right, but I must ask. May I hold this sword?" Keeper did not move. For several seconds, the Vex instructor was silent. Marcus thought he had made a serious mistake. Then Keeper spoke. "The ancient artifacts cannot usually be handled by students. This is academy policy." Marcus felt his hope disappear. But then Keeper continued. "However, you have asked permission and explained your reasoning. You have shown respect for the rules. Therefore, I will allow it. You may hold the Kareth blade." Marcus approached the wooden stand carefully. He had never touched something so old and so important. His hands were shaking slightly. He reached out and took the blade from its stand. The weight was different than he expected. It was heavier, but the heaviness was not distributed the way it should have been. Marcus held the blade horizontally in his hands. He felt how the weight pressed down. He closed his eyes and let his grandfather's training speak through his body. He could feel it immediately. The weight was not balanced correctly for the blade length and design. He opened his eyes and looked at Keeper. "The center of gravity is too far forward," Marcus said. "The blade is too heavy for this hilt design. I can feel it. The weight pulls down in front of my hand. When you swing this weapon, the person holding it would need to fight against the blade's own weight. The blade would fight back against the swing. This is not efficient. This is not how a well-made weapon should feel." Keeper did not respond. The Vex instructor stood completely still. Marcus became worried again. Had he said something offensive? Had he insulted a 5,000-year-old artifact? But then Keeper made a sound that humans interpreted as deep breathing. "Place the blade back on the stand," Keeper said. "Now hold the Helios sword." Marcus did as he was told. He picked up the second sword. Immediately, he felt the difference. This blade was balanced correctly. The weight sat in the right place. The hilt fit the hand properly. This was a weapon made by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. This was a weapon that would not fight back against its user. Yes, Marcus said. This one is correct. This one is balanced correctly. Keeper reached out and took the Helios blade from Marcus's hands. The Vex instructor held it the same way Marcus had held it. He looked at it for a long time. Then he placed it back on the stand. You are correct, Keeper said quietly. The Carath blade is not balanced correctly. Neither are the Meridian, Taurian, and Velsha blades. Only the Helios blade is balanced as it should be. Marcus felt shocked. You knew? You knew these weapons were not correct? The Academy knew, Keeper said. 300 years ago, before the current organizational system was established, someone discovered that these weapons had been modified. The modifications occurred within the ancient civilizations themselves. We did not know why the modifications had been made. We did not have the original context. Therefore, the Academy decided to treat the weapons as they currently existed. We recorded them as accurate historical artifacts. We did not speak of the modifications. We did not question them further. But why not? Marcus asked. Why not find out the truth? Keeper looked at the 5 swords on their stands. When the Vex instructor spoke, his voice was very quiet. Because the truth was complicated. Because the ancient civilizations were not perfect. Because it is easier to believe that the greatest weapons in history were created perfect than to accept that they had to be fixed and improved. The Vex are known as the keepers of history. It was difficult for my people to accept that we had overlooked something important. So we chose to overlook it. We chose to pretend we had already answered all the questions. Marcus said nothing. He looked at the 5 weapons. Each one was beautiful. Each one represented the genius of an ancient species. But some of them had flaws. Some of them had been changed and improved by the very species who created them. That made them more interesting, not less interesting. What should we do now, instructor? Marcus asked. Keeper closed his eyes. When the Vex opened them again, something had changed in his posture. Now we tell the truth, Keeper said. Come with me. We have much work to do. Keeper took Marcus down 3 levels below the training hall. They descended through stone corridors that seemed to go down into the earth itself. The Academy was built on a planet called Vex Prime, the original homeworld of the Vex. The planet had a thick crust and deep underground spaces. The oldest libraries and records were stored deep below the surface, where the temperature stayed constant and the rock protected them from damage. The archive chamber was the size of a large warehouse. Walls of files stretched from the floor to the ceiling. The files held records from every era of Vex history. Some records were written on paper. Some were recorded on ancient plastic. Some were stored on data crystals that the Vex had developed 10,000 years ago. A single crystal could hold the information of 1,000 books. An old Vex named Crescent was the head of the historical records department. Her skin had turned pale with age. Her movement was slow, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Crescent looked up from her work desk when Keeper and Marcus entered the chamber. Keeper explained the situation. He told Crescent about Marcus's observation. He told her about the weight imbalance in the ancient weapons. He told her that the Academy had known about the modifications 300 years ago. Crescent stood up very slowly. She moved toward one of the file walls. Her fingers ran along the data crystals. She was searching for something specific. Minutes passed. Then she stopped and pulled out a single crystal. Amnesia stopped. I suspected this would come up again eventually, Crescent said. The young Vex, who discovered the modifications, wanted to investigate further. He wanted to understand why the ancient species had changed their own weapons. But the Council did not approve additional research. They said the artifacts should be treated as perfect records of ancient civilizations. They said questions about modifications were beneath the dignity of the Academy. So the research was closed. The files were marked inactive. The crystal was placed here in the deep storage, where nobody would look at it. Crescent placed the crystal on a reading device. Data appeared on a large wall screen. It was handwritten notes from 300 years ago. The handwriting was old Vex script, from an era before their writing system had been simplified. Marcus could not read the old script, but Keeper could. The Vex instructor moved closer to the wall and read the notes carefully. As he read, his posture changed. His shoulders became tighter. His hands formed fists at his sides. The modifications were not random, Keeper said. They were purposeful. The notes here explained that the Karath sword was originally designed for a much larger species. The hilt was changed to fit smaller hands. The blade was reweighted to work with a different muscle structure. The notes suggest this was done deliberately by the Karath themselves, thousands of years after the sword was first created. Keeper continued reading. The Meridian blade was changed because the original curved design created problems with how it cut through water. The Taurian blade was modified because it was too heavy for most warriors to lift and swing effectively. The Velsia blade was changed to improve its accuracy. All of these modifications were made by the ancient civilizations themselves. They were improvements. They were not mistakes. Crescent moved to a different section of the archive. She pulled out more files. Historical records. Combat manuals written by ancient species. Scientific papers written thousands of years ago. All of these files showed the same story. The ancient civilizations had been practical. They had made weapons. They had used those weapons. And when they found problems, they fixed them. Why did the Council not want this known? Marcus asked. Crescent looked at the young human. Her eyes were very old, but they showed some kindness. The Vex believe that we exist to preserve history. We believe that history should be perfect and unchanging. We believe that if we keep accurate records, we become guardians of truth. But this presented a problem. The truth showed that even the greatest ancient civilizations were imperfect. The truth showed that they had to improve their own creations. That made them seem less great, less perfect, less worthy of being preserved in a museum. That is wrong, Marcus said. They are more great because they fix things. They show that they understood their mistakes. They show that they cared enough to make things better. Keeper made a sound that might have been Vex laughter. The human is correct. We have spent 300 years trying to protect the reputation of ancient civilizations by hiding the truth about them. We have dishonored their memory by refusing to acknowledge their intelligence and their ability to improve. Crescent touched her hand to her chest, which was a gesture of agreement among the Vex. We must make this public. We must tell the other historians. We must re-examine all of our ancient artifacts with fresh eyes. We must accept that history is not about perfection. History is about truth. The work lasted for 6 days. Marcus, Keeper, and Crescent, working with a dozen other historians, examined every ancient weapon in the Academy collection. They brought in engineers from other species who understood physics and material science. They used modern technology to measure the weight and balance of each weapon. They compared the modern measurements with the original designs that had been recorded thousands of years ago. The results were clear. Every ancient civilization had modified its own weapons at some point. The modifications were not failures. They were successes. They showed that the ancient species understood how their tools worked. They showed that they were willing to change things if change made them better. the other historians reacted in different ways. Some were excited to discover this new knowledge. They wanted to study the modifications further and understand why each ancient civilization had made specific changes. Some were disturbed by the idea that the ancient weapons were not original. They had to adjust their thinking about what it meant to preserve history. But one thing was clear to everyone. Marcus had been right. A young human, coming from a species that was only 5 years old in the Coalition, had seen what 30,000 years of Vex scholarship had missed. Marcus had looked at the weapons not as sacred artifacts, but as tools. He had applied practical knowledge from his own culture. And that practical knowledge had revealed something true about the ancient world. On the 6th day, Keeper made an announcement to the Academy. He explained that the ancient weapons display would be closed for 2 months. During that time, historians would work with engineers to properly document the modifications. The weapons would be preserved correctly, with the understanding that they were not the original designs. They were improvements. Marcus sat in the Academy common room when other cadets heard the announcement. The other species looked at him, some with respect, some with jealousy. One Kek soldier, an insectoid species with 6 arms, came and sat next to him. "You made the Vex admit they were wrong," the Kek soldier said. "That is dangerous. The Vex do not like being wrong." Marcus did not feel proud. He just felt glad that the truth was coming out. "I did not make them admit anything," Marcus said. "I just asked a question. Keeper and Crescent chose to tell the truth. That choice was much braver than my question." But inside, Marcus knew something had changed at the Academy. Humans were no longer just young apprentices learning from older species. Humans were contributors. Humans brought different ways of seeing the world. And sometimes those different ways of seeing revealed truths that had been hidden for 300 years. The 2 months of study changed everything. The Academy brought in the best scholars from every species in the Galactic Coalition. Crystalline engineers from the Versian worlds came to analyze the blade structures. Mirthal historians from the aquatic colonies offered their perspectives on why water-fighting species would modify weapons differently. Kek scientists, with their unique understanding of chemistry, explained how different metals had been treated over thousands of years. Marcus worked every day with the research team. His simple observation had opened the door. Now everyone wanted to understand what was behind that door. Keeper assigned him to work directly with Crescent. The old Vex historian gave him projects to complete. She taught him how to read ancient languages. She showed him how to analyze historical records. She explained the methods that historians use to separate truth from legend, but not everyone was happy about this change. The Academy Council held debates about what should happen next. Some members of the council argued that the modifications should be hidden again. They said that the public did not need to know about these details. They said that knowing the ancient weapons had been changed would make people lose respect for ancient civilizations. Keeper argued against this position in every meeting. The Vex instructor said that truth was more important than protecting people's feelings. He said that history that was hidden was not history at all. He said that the ancient civilizations were more impressive because they had made improvements, not less impressive. A Karath warrior who recognized a flaw in his own blade and fixed it was stronger than a Karath warrior who pretended his blade was perfect. Keeper said, "Improvement shows wisdom. It shows the ability to learn. It shows that even great civilizations knew they could become greater." The council eventually agreed. The decision was made to publish the full history of the modifications. Every file from Crescent's archive would be released to the public. Every modern study would be released to the public. The ancient civilizations would be presented honestly, with their strengths and their willingness to improve. But there was a cost to this honesty. Some Vex scholars felt deeply wounded. They had spent their entire lives teaching that the ancient weapons were perfect. Now they had to admit that they had been wrong. Some of them retired from their positions. Some refused to work on the new research. Some made complaints to the Academy Council, saying that Keeper had disgraced the reputation of Vex scholarship. Keeper did not defend himself against these complaints. He simply continued his work. He worked with Marcus and Crescent every single day. He studied the modifications. He wrote new historical accounts. He created a new category in the Academy libraries for corrected historical records. One evening, after a long day of research, Keeper asked Marcus to sit with him in the empty training hall. The 5 ancient swords were still on their display stands, but now their stands had new information plaques. The plaques explained that the weapons had been modified. They explained why the modifications had been made. They explained what this revealed about ancient civilizations. "Do you understand what we have discovered?" Keeper asked Marcus. "I think so," Marcus said. The ancient species were not perfect. They were smart enough to improve their own work. "More than that," Keeper said. "We have discovered that perfection is not the point. Improvement is the point. These weapons are more beautiful because they show the fingerprints of many hands, many minds, across thousands of years. Each modification shows a decision made by someone who cared about making things better." Keeper walked to the Karath sword. The Vex instructor pointed at where the blade met the hilt. The original design was made by Karath hands, but the modification was made by different Karath hands, maybe 1,000 years later. Those later hands understood that the original design had a problem. Those hands had the courage to change what their ancestors created. That is not disrespect. That is the highest form of respect. It says, "Your work was good, but we can make it better." Marcus understood. The Karath had not rejected their own history. They had improved it. They had honored their ancestors not by keeping their work unchanged, but by making their work more effective. The Vex rejected this truth for 300 years, Keeper continued. We thought that acknowledging the modifications would make the ancient civilizations seem weaker. Instead, we made ourselves weaker by refusing to see the truth. We turned ancient living cultures into dead museum pieces. We stopped asking questions. We stopped learning. "Why did you change your mind now?" Marcus asked. "Because a human asked me why," Keeper said. "Because someone from outside our tradition saw what we could not see. You did not come to the Academy with centuries of Vex training. You did not come with the weight of 300 years of established scholarship. You came with fresh eyes. You asked a simple question. Why are they weighted wrong?" And that question broke open everything we thought we knew. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I just noticed something that did not feel right." "Exactly," Keeper said. "You noticed. You paid attention. You trusted what your hands and your training told you. And you had the courage to speak when speaking was difficult. Many of my own students see the same things you saw, but they do not speak. They accept what they are told. They assume that if something has been taught for 300 years, it must be true." Over the next week, other things began to change at the Academy. The Council announced that they were creating a new department. The department would be called Cross-Species Perspectives. Its job would be to examine all Academy teachings from the viewpoint of different species. If one species could see something that others could not see, that perspective would be valued. That perspective would be studied. Marcus was offered a position in the new department. He would work as a junior scholar, combining his practical knowledge with the research skills that Crescent had taught him. He would make good money. He would have access to the greatest libraries and archives in the galaxy. He would work with the best minds from every civilized species. But the most important thing was something different. For the first time in 300 years, The Galactic Coalition Military Academy had admitted that it had been wrong about something, and the admission had made the Academy stronger, not weaker. The researchers now understood ancient weapons better than they had before. The historians now understood ancient civilizations better. Everyone saw that truth was more valuable than perfect images. On his final night as a regular cadet, Marcus stood in the training hall with Keeper. Other cadets were sleeping in their dormitory rooms. The morning would bring a ceremony where Marcus would be promoted to officer rank ahead of his usual graduation date. But right now, it was quiet. "I came to the academy wanting to prove that humans could be warriors," Marcus said. "But I proved something different." "What did you prove?" Keeper asked. "That humans ask questions," Marcus said. "That sometimes the best strength is not being afraid to say, 'I think something is wrong here. I think we should look more carefully.'" Keeper made the Vex gesture of respect. He placed one thin hand over the area where his heart would be. "That is the greatest strength any species can have," the instructor said. "The strength to question. The strength to seek truth. The strength to admit when you have been wrong. These things make civilizations grow. These things make us all greater." The ceremony took place in the Grand Amphitheater, a massive hall that could hold 5,000 people. The ceiling rose 200 meters above the floor. The walls were carved from white stone. Representations of great warriors and scholars from every species looked down from the walls. Thousands of people attended the ceremony. Ambassadors from 20 different species sat in the front rows. Military commanders and academy officials occupied the middle section. Regular soldiers and students filled the remaining seats. News from across the galaxy had been sent to every major planet. This ceremony was important because it marked a change in how the Galactic Coalition saw itself. Marcus wore a new uniform. The gray of a junior cadet had been replaced with the blue of a full officer. A medal hung from his chest. The medal showed a blade balanced on a single point. It was called the Medal of Clear Seeing. It was awarded to those who revealed hidden truth through courage and honest observation. Keeper stood on the stage with Marcus. So did Crescent. The head of the Galactic Coalition, a member of an ancient species called the Prism Collective, made a speech. The Prism Collective did not have individual bodies the way other species did. Instead, they existed as beings of pure energy. This particular Prism Collective member took the form of light that flickered in different colors as he spoke. For 10,000 years, the weapons in our archive have been treated as perfect representations of ancient civilizations. The Prism Collective said, "For 300 years, we have known that some of these weapons had been modified, but we chose not to acknowledge this. We told ourselves that this information was not important. We told ourselves that change was not as valuable as preservation. We were wrong." The Prism Collective gestured toward Marcus. This young human, from a species that has been part of our coalition for only 5 years, asked a simple question. Why are they weighted wrong? That question changed everything. It forced us to look again at what we thought we already understood. It showed us that improvement is not betrayal of the past. It showed us that change can be honest and good. The ceremony lasted 3 hours. Officials from each major species made speeches. They talked about what it meant to have humans contributing to galactic scholarship. They talked about the importance of fresh perspectives. They talked about what the new Department of Cross-Species Perspectives would accomplish, but the most important moment came at the end. Crescent was given control of the Vex historical archives. She was promoted from head of records to chief historian of the entire coalition. This was the highest position a scholar could reach. It meant that the old Vex would have final authority over how all historical information was recorded and preserved. And Crescent's first official act was to appoint a mixed committee. The committee would include historians from every species. Humans, Vex, Rashians, Murthal, Kex, Prism Collective. and 20 other species would work together to examine all galactic artifacts with fresh eyes. "We will no longer hide uncomfortable truths," Crescent said. "We will acknowledge when we have made mistakes. We will be grateful for perspectives from all species, especially from younger species who see things that we have become blind to. History is not a museum. History is a living thing. It must be examined, questioned, and understood anew by every generation." After the formal ceremony, there was a celebration. People from different species gathered in the Academy courtyard. They ate food from 100 different worlds. They drank beverages that would be toxic to most species, but delightful to a few. They talked and laughed and made new friendships. Marcus moved through the crowd, shaking hands and receiving congratulations. But he felt tired. He had done nothing special. He had just asked a question. Somehow everyone had turned this into something much bigger than it was. Near midnight, Marcus found himself standing alone in the training hall again. The 5 ancient swords still sat on their display stands, but now there was additional information about each one. The plaques explained exactly what had been modified, when the modifications had been made, and why the ancient species had made the changes. "You seem troubled," a voice said behind him. Marcus turned to see Keeper approaching. The Vex instructor moved silently across the stone floor. The hall was dimly lit at night, with only small lights glowing along the walls. "I keep thinking that I did something I should not have done," Marcus said. "I questioned something that should have been left alone." "Why do you think that?" Keeper asked. "Because now everything is different. The Academy is different. The way people think about history is different. Some of the older Vex scholars are angry. Some of them feel like I ruined everything." Keeper looked at the 5 swords. "Those scholars are upset because change is difficult. They spent their entire lives believing something. Now they must believe something different. That is hard. But they will adapt. Over time, they will see that this new way of understanding history is better. They will see that acknowledging the modifications makes the ancient civilizations more interesting, not less." "What if I made a mistake?" Marcus asked. "What if I was wrong about the balance?" "Then we would have discovered that through research," Keeper said. "Truth is truth. It does not matter who finds it. It does not matter how long it takes to find it. Once truth is found, it cannot be hidden again." Marcus walked to the Karath sword. He looked at the plaques that explained how the blade had been modified. The ancient Karath metalworkers had left no notes explaining why they made the changes. But the modern researchers had figured it out. The original blade had been designed for creatures with much larger bodies. The Karath had modified it to work for their actual physiology. This showed that they were practical. They were willing to change things when change was necessary. "Will you stay with the Academy?" Keeper asked. "I will work with Crescent in the new department," Marcus said. "But I do not want to become someone who just sits in archives and reads old records. I want to keep learning. I want to see other planets. I want to talk to warriors from other species and learn their perspectives." "Good," Keeper said. "You have a gift for seeing what others miss. You should use that gift. You should visit the weapon collections of every species. You should look at their techniques and their histories. Many of them have forgotten important things about their own cultures. Many of them have hidden uncomfortable truths. You can help them remember. You can help them uncover the truth." Over the next month, Marcus received offers from every major military organization in the Galactic Coalition. The Vortian Collective wanted him to examine their crystalline weapons. The Murthal wanted him to study their water combat systems. The Kex wanted him to analyze the evolution of their distributed mind military tactics. Every species saw what Marcus could do. Every species wanted that gift for themselves. Marcus accepted a position that would let him work for all of them. He would travel from planet to planet, consulting with military historians and weapons scholars. He would look at artifacts with fresh eyes. He would ask questions that might seem simple, but that revealed important truths. And wherever he went, he would teach people the same thing Keeper had taught him. Truth is more valuable than comfort. Improvement is more valuable than perfection. Asking questions is more valuable than accepting what you are told. On the day Marcus left the academy to begin his travels, he stood one final time in the training hall. The 5 ancient swords were still there, but they were no longer mysteries. They were teachers. They showed that even great civilizations could learn. They showed that change was not betrayal. They showed that the willingness to improve was the greatest strength of all. Keeper came to say goodbye. The Vex instructor placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Thank you for asking why," Keeper said. "Thank you for showing us that we were wrong. And thank you for reminding us that sometimes the youngest voices speak the truest words." Marcus left the training hall. He walked across the academy grounds toward the landing pad where his ship was waiting. Behind him, the great halls and libraries of the Galactic Coalition Military Academy stood against the sky. Inside those buildings, scholars from every species were working together. They were examining artifacts. They were questioning old beliefs. They were learning, and it had all started with one human asking a simple question: why are they weighted wrong?